Welcome to the Heli Academy podcast. I'm Tom Barnes and I'm from the UK.
Hey guys, this is Eric Dowdy, Chief Instructor for Hillsborough Heli Academy, and I'm here with Kimberly Whips, our campus manager. And today we're going to talk to you about a little bit about your visas, a little bit about CPT and OPT today.
Yes, that's correct.
Awesome. So Kimberly, I guess the best way to start out is, what in the world is CPT?
CPT is curricular practical training. It is the last course before you graduate. The nice thing is that in that course, you could be here at this school being trained in how to be a CFI and then working as a CFI, or you could be at another school. So it doesn't have to be done here at the school, but it is still technically the last course of your training before you graduate.
So according to the government, I mean, based on how the visas work, let me just make sure I understand this, Kimberly, is actually working as an instructor, as a professional pilot, is part of the professional pilot program for the government. So correct. The government wants you guys to get out there and start working.
Yes, and they want you to be trained in how to be a CFI. It's considered part of your training.
Cool.
Yeah. Yeah, and the great thing is that you could do it unpaid, but you can also do it paid.
Yes.
Which,
make sure your flight school is paying you, everyone.
Yes, yes. It's a very good thing. It's a good thing to get paid for it. So, yeah. So that's kind of the basic of what CPT is. So,
okay, so you have an individual, they're going through their training, they're finishing up their CFI, they're getting into their CFII. What do they need to start thinking about? When do they need to come talk to you? What's kind of the process there?
Okay, so the first thing is when you're getting near the end of CFI, you're going to sign up for one of my CPT and OPT classes. Oh. I offer it about every 2 months, kind of depending on how quickly we have students that are coming towards the end of their CFI. That's when I think, it's probably time to do another one of these. And we go through all of this stuff in detail, and I'm there to answer questions, and you get to leave with worksheets that you will take with you because there's information, very important information that you're going to need further down the road towards the end of CPT and things like that. So that would be the first thing to do, is to come to the class. But basically what happens is when you finish your CFI and you finish when you finish your CFI, you're going to start looking for that position, whether it's here at HAA or if you're going to be working for another school. And then during that time, you can also be doing your CFII with us. Then when you get that other position, they're going to give you a job offer letter, and that starts the whole paperwork process. And I'm going to give you a list of things that you're going to need to make sure that you have in place so that you're working legally. And then while you're doing that, you're still considered our student. So you're still on our I-20. You still have to check in with me regularly, so you won't get away from me quite yet.
So, I think it's really funny because you finally graduate from that CFI course, right? Yeah. And the first thing that I tell everybody is, here comes the paperwork, right? CFIs, when they first start out, they underestimate how much paperwork
oh my gosh.
That they actually need to do for this job and the documentation that we need to do as pilots. And it sounds like CPT is the perfect introduction for that. Is like, we need to fill out some forms now.
Fill out some forms,
get you in the workforce. But that's really, really great. I love that, CPT is a continued education thing, right?
Right.
What?
Oh, speaking of which, I just remembered the last thing I forgot. Please. It is continued education. And since you are considered our student, you still have to maintain visa status. And so basically that is checking in with me. It's updating your address with me. All those things that you have to do as a student, you have to do while you're on CPT.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great.
See, I knew it would come back around.
Yeah, it always does. Yeah. That's right. Yeah. When you finally break out in the industry and you're a CFI in that first job, right? It's, our CFI course really teaches you those fundamentals of how to instruct, right? And where to go from there. But you're really there without that instructional experience.
Right.
And so actually sitting there with the student and getting real world experience of all these principles and theories that we've taught you really just kind of consolidates all that knowledge. And I love the first year of CFI's career because the growth in them as pilots, as instructors, and personally as well is super exponential. And they come out of it just really, really wonderful examples of the type of pilots that we're putting out in the industry.
Right.
And so that's honestly my favorite season, and developing and working with those CFIs is one of my favorite parts of being in my job.
Right. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And the great thing is too is that all the while they're doing all of those things, they're putting hours in their logbook.
Absolutely.
Kind of the point of it
Absolutely.
all. So.
Building them fast.
Yep.
There you go.
Yep.
Yeah. And it goes so fast, let me just say.
It does. Oh my goodness. I just was looking at the list of people who are currently on CPT, and because when you finish CPT, then you're going to move into OPT, and you get an email from me saying, hey, it's almost time to apply for OPT. I was looking at the list and I'm like, how is it possible it's already time for these guys to apply for OPT? Because I feel like they just started. But yeah, it does. It goes really fast. It seems like 2 years is a long period of time, but it goes pretty fast.
It goes pretty fast.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's a great segue, actually, because I know there's some really important things to think about when you start transitioning from CPT to OPT. And there's some areas where, people can make mistakes, and those aren't mistakes that we want individuals making. So Talk to me a little bit about that process. Say we're coming up on into that first year of CPT and we're about to get into OPT. What do you advise the students to really start thinking about?
Okay. So first of all, we talk about CPT as being a year. Technically, we only give you 11 and a half months of CPT because if you do a full year, you are not qualified for OPT.
Oh.
So by cutting CPT by 2 weeks, you qualify for another full year.
Wow.
The difference here is that when you're on CPT, you are still our student. You're on our I-20. You're considered not yet graduated. When you finish CPT, that's your technically graduate. And you apply for OPT, which is optional practical training. And that is done under the government's watch, basically. So you're going to apply with USCIS for your OPT. You get an employment authorization card. You are legally working in the United States. You're not a student anymore. You're just here able to work for 1 year. So those are the two. That's kind of the big difference between the two. With OPT, I think the thing that I stress the most in the class is what I actually just recently dubbed the insanity timeline. It is so frustrating it's government stuff, so nothing's going to make a lot of sense, but there are these hard and fast specific dates. You can't apply until this date, and then you have to apply within this range. And if you apply, 1 day after, you are automatically denied. And then they send the card, but you don't have it yet. And there's just all this stuff. So I just recently laid it all out on this timeline, and I put it in the worksheet because this is the kind of stuff that you need to follow very carefully. There's all these little things where it's like you have 1 week to do this, and then you only have 7 days. It's the same thing, a week and 7 days. But all these little things that can just throw people off. And so I think that is the hardest thing about OPT is just making sure that when you apply that you're doing it correctly within their timeline and following all these little rules that they have. And the more we do it, the more, we learn how to help students get through it because, we have students that survive it every year. So it's great. But it is a little bit of a hassle at the beginning for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thankfully, they have you to help them through that process in the class and be very specific on it because, we don't want anybody getting in trouble with any visa stuff.
Right. Or getting left behind or something going wrong.
Exactly. We want them to be able to work in the U.S. and build as many hours as they possibly can and get all out of this opportunity and experience that they're offered on that visa. So.
Yes. And so when students come up to OPT, it's a time where I get to reach out. You still aren't rid of me yet.
Yeah.
I get to reach out to them and still stay in touch and walk them through the OPT process. It's not something that, as a DSO, that I can do for the students because it is between the student and the government, but we help as much as we can with that.
So, Kimberly, you've been in this position. You've been helping students do this for several years now. What are the most common questions that you get about CPT and OPT?
I think the most common, well, with CPT, the most common is how long do I have before I have to find a job? Because people are, they're finishing CFI, they're exhausted, and they want to know, can I take a break? Really, you can't. Because CPT is the next course, your next and final course, you basically have to start it right away. So there's about a 2 to 3 week window that you really need to find a job. If they're taking CFII with us, then that gives just a little more of a cushion, but really 2 to 3 weeks. A lot of people will say, well, I thought I had 60 days once. No, the 60 days is once your I-20 ends, you have 60 days to leave the country, not to find a job.
Yeah, and we don't want them leaving the country.
No, we don't want them to leave the country. And then I think, let's see, on CPT, another question I get asked on both CPT and OPT is, what if I need to go home? Can I take a vacation? You can take a vacation on both. Of course, you need to talk to your employer at that point. You're allowed to take vacation, but your CPT and OPT do not pause while you're on vacation. So if you have 11 and a half months of CPT and you decide to go home for a month and a half, now you only have 10 months because it doesn't pause your timeline. So, and then another thing is we have seen just recently with people leaving the country, on CPT and OPT, sometimes you get a cranky border guard and they go, yeah, you don't need to come back. So whenever people travel with CPT and OPT, we highly recommend that they take, their I-20, make obviously their passport and visa, take your job offer letter, take your pay stubs, like any kind of proof that you can have just in case. Most people don't have a problem, but just in case you get that one guy who's in a bad mood, then you have proof that you have a job, you're coming back to a job, you're legally here, all of that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So with the vacation is just kind of a follow-up with you. Is there any, I guess, season during OPT, maybe that transition where you would say, hey, don't plan to do a vacation when you're in the OPT application process? Is there any risky times where students probably should not leave the country while on CPT and OPT?
Yeah, I would not leave between CPT and OPT.
Okay.
A lot of people want to because it seems like a natural break.
Yeah.
While you're waiting for your OPT to be approved. But you're waiting for your OPT to be approved. If you Google it, yes, it's legal, you can. But you're leaving the country without the things in hand that, you
need to get back in.
You might need to get back in.
Yeah.
So I always tell students when they ask, I wouldn't chance it. I wouldn't travel during that time. Travel when you're established in one or the other, but not in between.
So maybe to not make this sound super scary for students, because it's really not that scary.
It's not. And it's very few cases that I think we had one student in Hillsborough that was turned away at CPT, and that's it. But, if you Google it, it's like Googling your symptoms. Yeah, there's always going to be some people that got turned away at the border.
Yeah. But thankfully, we have you as a resource for any questions, any help if there are any hiccups in the process. So thank you for that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I guess I want to comment a little bit on those couple weeks that you had to find the job between finishing your CFI training and starting that CPT class or training. It seems like a small window of time, but over the last 3 years, we have 100% placement rate. And so I always sympathize with those feelings of like stress and anxiety that, oh no, I need to make phone calls. But the industry knows who we are here at Hillsborough Heli.
Yes,
and, talk to your CFI instructors, right? They have a list of schools that are, we get calls on a regular basis of schools looking for our graduates, our candidates, and they want to put you guys to work. And so if you're ever in doubt or you're a little nervous about it or something like that, go talk to one of those CFI instructors, and they have that list that we're constantly building and putting people on there and taking phone calls about to make sure that transition is as seamless as possible.
Yeah. Yep. I know it seems daunting.
It does.
But we've never had somebody not get a job.
That's right.
And most of them come back with a couple options.
Absolutely.
And they get to take their pick. So.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, awesome. Well, Kimberly, thank you so much for playing such a pivotal role in this whole process and being there for the students and being able to answer these questions. It's wonderful. We appreciate everything that you do. So thanks for sharing this with us today.
Absolutely. Thank you.